Washington, which is right outside Portland, Oregon. He has a company called Veritas Custom Guitars, and he's amazing. You should go to his website and check out his stuff. It's super rad. This one's made fully out of rosewood, so it's got really cool tone. It's like super mellow. I love humbuckers, so these are Lindy Fairlane humbuckers, which are totally killer for toning. The other guitar I play is that Telly. It's a Squire, and but I've basically like replaced all the electronics in it and put put Lindy Fairlanes in that. They're super rad pickups, but
yeah. I'm back. Slash, I didn't mean to send a text to you.
I know, I saw that. It's cool, man. I received it anyway.
Why are you sitting over there, bro?
I don't know, because I don't want to sit. Where are you going to sit?
I don't know. My pedals are here.
Well, I could stand too. We can like walk around the room.
I don't want to stand. It's it's just little chairs instead. What's the name of the company again?
So the name of the company is Veritas, and that's kind of like his little custom coin. You guys can
everybody
check
that guitar out.
Yeah. And the cool thing about Casey and Veritas is he's like, he's coming out with like a line of guitars that you can pick from, but he's also like super customizable. Like basically you can request anything that you really want, and he'll pretty much do it for you as long as you pay him what he needs for parts and all that.
Are the pickups custom?
No, so these are Lindy Fairlanes. So Lindy's a different guy, but super rad pickups, hand wound. I love him. He's like, it's probably my favorite pickup company. Lindy,
almost as good as Lawler's.
It's debatable. It's debatable. Yeah. But yeah, Casey's crazy. You guys should check out his stuff. He's built a few different guitars that are pretty wild. One of them literally has in mother of pearl inlay the Hawaiian Islands on the neck. It's like it's like super accurate. It's unbelievable. Another one he like built like for a dentist. She just wanted to like put it on her wall, and so he like inlaid like a tooth in the neck. So it's like he'll do like
somebody's
crazy
actual tooth.
No, like pearl
That would be
inlay.
creepy.
That would be super creepy.
I have all these teeth for patients. I want them put in.
Yeah. That would be super weird.
Gross.
But all that to say that he'll do pretty much anything you want him to do if you want it. So if you want a tooth on your neck, he can do that.
And you said you had a Telly?
Yeah, so my other guitar, I didn't bring it, but it's a Telly. It's also got humbuckers on it, and it's actually a Squire, but I just kind of basically replaced like all the electronics and just kind of tricked it out. I don't know, it was cheap and I liked the way it played, so I've kind of just stuck with it.
Have you heard of Sugi guitars?
Sugi? I don't think so. Huh?
I saw it in LA. This guy had looks like they specialize in the Telly and they make customs, and it's Japanese design but American made.
Cool.
So I didn't know if like you heard of them because you said something like he's probably.
Yeah.
They're Sugi Rainmaker. If you ever get a chance, it's worth a look at.
That's awesome.
Him, really follow through guy, so talk back to him and he'll customize it. And so my friend got that, and I had to watch.
Like, I want that.
I want it so bad.
Totally. You want? Let's talk tone. This is the tone class.
This is the loud class.
The loud class. You want me to kind of start with?
It has your name on the.
It does. It has my name on it, so I guess I'll start.
You should start.
All right. Well, so this is my amp that I primarily use. Like for conferences and tours and stuff, Pope and I, we typically play stereo, so we'll have 2 amps set up. And those can kind of...
for this class.
Yeah, that'd be way too much. But this is the amp that I always have, regardless of what I'm pairing with it. It's just a Fender Hot Rod Deluxe, but it's a custom shop one that Fender did. They made like 800 or something. So it's got like, a different speaker, and I put like vintage tubes in it. And so it's got, it's got its own tone. It's very Fendery, but kind of in its own unique way. So that's my amp, and it's got reverb, which that's a pretty big part of my tone. I just like the way that Fenders kind of have that squishy mid-range to them. So pretty much, and you can kind of come up and look at settings too. Don't feel like, kind of in the other class we did, don't feel like you have to sit there. Typically what I'll do for like when I play live, I'll kind of decide where I want to set my volume. So I think we talked about it in one of the other classes. I really like my amp to have a lot of headroom, which basically just means you can turn it up pretty loud before it'll start to break up. So I love being able to have like good clean tone live, you know. But then if you like really dig in, you can kind of bring out, you know, a little bit of that grit. And so it's gonna be a little bit loud, but usually like for live I'll have it at like 3.5 or so. So if you want, you can get like semi like clean tone. Whereas if you dig in though, you can get some of that grit out there. And then as far as just like my EQs on this amp, I kind of just know where I typically set them. This isn't going to be like the setting that works for all of you guys, because every amp's different, every guitar is different, every scenario is different, you know, PA you're playing through and whatnot. So, but this is kind of like my starting point, which you guys should all have too, kind of, you know, like kind of a spot on your amp where you know typically this is where I'm going to start, and then if I need to make adjustments, you kind of do that. So, I mean, one thing that Pope and I do a lot too is before a set, we'll plug in just directly into our amps and just kind of get it dialed, feeling like, all right, that's pretty close, and then we'll run it back out, you know, to our pedal boards and kind of go from there. And then if the sound guy's like, it's way too harsh, you know, you need to dial back something, then we'll go from there and adjust it.
Yeah. So what's your breakup point?
So for right here, right where it is about now is like 3.5. It's kind of where, you know, you can still get some pretty clean tone. But if you want to dig in, you can start to get that breakup. So, again, that's a preference thing. I really like having lots of headroom. I like being able to have that clean tone, you know, for those moments where you just want to have just kind of pretty high, like whatever stuff. And then if you want to get crazy, you know, you can really dig in and bring out some more drivey. And that's without even having to use overdrives, and that's a whole nother thing. I kind of like being able to, just with purely my amp, being able to get a little bit clean and a little bit of grit if I want.
Wow.
Once I start stacking overdrives and all that, that's like a whole another step, basically. So, but tone-wise, since this is a class about tone, you know, this is kind of your starting point, your amp, your guitar. So these pickups, I don't know how much you guys know about pickups. There's like different, you know.
Stool coil.
Yeah, you can wind them higher or lower output, basically. These are like 8K, so they're not super high output, they're not super low, they're kind of like in the middle, so they're pretty like warm and mellow, and they're not like screaming hot or anything. Basically you start there, and then your amp. So those are my settings. From there, yeah, so like I was saying, I kind of like to add like drive and stuff. So from there I have a clean boost / overdrive pedal that I'll use. So basically it'll go from like this to, make sure it's in the right spot, to like this. Which that sounds super drivey right now. I don't.
Loud.
Yeah, it's so loud. I'll turn it back down. Sorry. This amp is like crazy loud.
It's insane loud.
That's more accurate of what it would typically sound like live, as far as how much I'm boosting it. So it's an overdrive pedal, but I kind of use it as a clean boost. Although there's times where I'll turn up the drive and get more kind of driviness out of it or whatever. And from there, we kind of talked the other day about stacking overdrives, which you can do. I don't do that a ton, but I do sometimes, and that's what I use my OCD pedal for. That's a second generation OCD, which there's a difference. They make them now, but they don't sound nearly the same, so they have the red light, and they're okay. I don't know. The old ones are pretty sweet, though. But I use that sometimes to stack. Huh?
Blue LEDs sound better.
The blue, yeah, it's just the blue LED. It sounds so much better. So, which right now it's set to add a lot more overdrive, so we were doing stuff this morning that was pretty heavy, so I had it turned up. But so those are kind of my two overdrives, and that's basically how I stack that for like drive. So clean, I'd have it louder, you know, in a live setting typically, so there'd be more breakup than that. But then I'd stack overdriver and then OCD on top of that. So for a lot of rhythm stuff, a lot of times I won't even go to the OCD. I'll just set my overdriver to kind of fill in with the rhythm stuff. A lot of times I do that when I'm playing with Pope and he's doing a lot of the drivier, like mid-rangey, high kind of parts. I'll just kind of incorporate the overdriver with that. Yeah, do you want to say some stuff about your tone, your amp?
This is an amp that took me a couple years to find, but once I found it, I was kind of sold on it. You ever heard of a company called 65 Amps? These are hand-built in Hollywood. And as far as boutique amps go, they kind of make a really wide range of stuff, and while they are kind of pricey, and I guess they look a little bit flashy too, they sound really, really good. And I like this one because it's super mid-rangey and punchy, like no pedals on it. You can hear it's very different than Bobby's amp. Got a little more country training, and that's on 2. This is only 18 watts, but it gets really, really loud. So on like 5, especially with a telly, it might be a little bright in here.
And that's an 18-watt amp, so
yeah, it's an 18-watt amp, so it doesn't have as much headroom. But I mean, again, it's a really dynamic amp too, because I can dime it and just get really, really drivey, but pull it down. And it's still pretty clean, but then, So I just like that it's got a lot of dynamic in an amp already. You know, if for some reason my pedals don't work, I can get a lot out of an amp, and it's kind of another thing too. Like in a studio setting, sometimes I just won't even use drive pedals. I'll just crank the heck out of this thing, and it's everything I need. So as far as like gear or finding your tone, I'd say the most important thing is probably finding an amp that resonates with you as a player. I played amps for 4 years before I settled on this thing, and I played everything I could get my hands on. And this one did it for me. It's got 2 channels. I use this channel, which is an EF86 channel. It just has just the volume, which is volume, obviously. But the more you turn it up, the dirtier it gets. The tone just kind of rolls off the high end. It doesn't really boost low frequencies or anything. It's very much true to what your pickups are actually putting out. So I'll just put it on 5 and kind of just sweep it. So this is all the way up. So it's pretty bright, but with a telly, like with a Veritas or something with humbuckers, I might want to have it that bright, just because those pickups are kind of lower output humbuckers and pretty dark, but at the same time, you know, you can totally go jazzy with this. Out of tune jazz chords there, but I typically keep it on 6, and then there's a switch on this thing that kind of beefs up the mids, which is really cool because you can just have it real kind of beefy. And if any of you have played with a matchless, they kind of have a similar knob. And this is really cool for dialing in the low end, because a lot of times low end can be, like as a guitar player, you want it to sound really big and full, but often that kind of translates into mud. This switch is cool because I can kind of start with no low end at all. Here it's kind of like 60s AC 30, like total Beatles tone, but you can kind of beef it up and so you hear it kind of adding more low end there. It's really cool to kind of dial in the low end that way. So it's got 6 positions. I'm typically on 4 with the telly, just kind of fill it out a little bit more. But this is like my main amp for everything. I always use this for just about everything, unless there's a studio situation that calls for something different. And then for my tone, at least, I like the sound of a compressor always on, and it just kind of evens things out, especially with an amp like this that can get kind of I don't know how to describe it other than kind of not harsh, but kind of spiky, kind of bitey, yeah, a lot of bite. Dramatic. I find this kind of makes it just a little smoother. Hear how that kind of squishes things a little bit. So I'm not really push out of it and making it a little smoother. And then pretty much always on. I guess I'll put this back. I typically run it maybe 4. So it's already got a decent amount of drive on the amp. Like I said, I don't really do clean guitars very often. I'll just rely on pick attack to it's as clean as I need it to be. So then I'll leave a tube screamer on most of the time. And it's kind of funny, like in person, to me, it often sounds a little weird. Like, I think it sounds good, but sometimes it's like, oh, you know, compared to... It's kind of like, wow, I just lost a ton of low end, but with in-ears and in a mix, it sounds freaking awesome, which is always king. If you... Standing out front there, for y'all, it probably sounds a little bright, a little harsh, but if you stick your ear right in the speaker, which I recommend doing, dude, it sounds totally different. So that's kind of an always-on thing for me. And then I stack with an M drive, which is a pretty cool transparent overdrive. Like it sounds like my tone is just a little fatter and a little louder. So off, on, and then on the other side of the tube screamer and signal chain, if you were in the class where we kind of went through this kind of stuff. They're set up so that the tube screamer is kind of in between these. So this is closer to the guitar and this is closer to the amp. And the Joyride just makes things a lot louder and a little brighter. It stays pretty true to what your amp is doing, but it adds quite a bit and it gets pretty dirty and hairy and it's really loud too, so I like that. Those are kind of just the basics of my tone. I don't always have reverb on. I'd say most of the time I probably do, but it's just to kind of help the stereo field.
Kind of widens it.
Yeah, actually, we could demonstrate that, Bobby. You should plug this. Well, play your amp first with just like mono verb, and then plug this in. And you can kind of, does anybody in here not run stereo? Who doesn't run stereo? Who just goes one amp? Cool, so probably half of you guys. This should kind of just show you the difference between mono and stereo and how big it can actually.
You want me to show them the reverb on my amp and then
show them like the reverb from your, like a crazy verb from the blue sky.
I see what you want to do.
Yeah, cool. And then go. Sorry, everybody, it's loud. And then go stereo with them, and you'll see kind of how much bigger everything gets. I mean, of course, you're adding another amp, but yeah.
So that's just the So this is just the blue sky. Just mono. So you see, and an in-ear mix or like a studio mix where you're not listening to all the volume that this is putting out as well, it's actually even more noticeable. But even if you just have like another little amp that doesn't sound as good, I recommend using it for stereo, just because stereo always sounds bigger and a little bit better. Yeah.
Do you mix that in your ears?
Yeah, so what we do, because stereo is like a left and right thing, right? What we'll do is we'll have, so if both of these were Bobby's amps, he would probably have his main one in his right ear, and then his secondary in his left ear. And those amps would be exclusive for that ear. So you just get the biggest degree of separation you can, and that just really, really opens up guitar tones in your mix.
So like when we play live together, yeah, for both of us, like typically Pope's like on the left side of the stage, I'm on the right side of the stage, and so I'll put my amp on my right side and him on my left since he's on the left side of me, and that kind of just helps.
Yeah, and it's a little different because we both run stereo.
Yeah.
So we'll kind of have his right. Well,
Not as loud as one
we
side.
kind of make them a little bit opposite, but we're still like. I guess it's easier if I just describe my mix. So in my ears, I'm typically on the left ear. That's where where I'm mostly hearing my guitar. But I'll still have some in my right. Just my right ear will be turned down. So my guitar will be left heavy, but it's still stereo, and his will be right heavy, still in stereo.
But you still have your other amp in the right with him,
And vice versa with him. Yeah.
Right.
And what that does, that's actually the same thing that Chris, our front of house guy, does with guitars in the house. And you'll notice that it sounds way bigger that way than just having one on one side and one on the other. And you couldn't really do that in a front of house mix without it sounding weird.
Yeah.
Because if you think about it, people standing on this side would only hear one guitar. Vice versa on the other. So you kind of mix ears in a similar way there.
Just kind of blend them.
Yeah. But it's really cool because the guitars separate well, and you can still tell what's going on and what you're playing, and I can hear him clearly, and it sounds big and awesome, and everybody's happy.
Yeah.
Unless you're me, because my innards broke last night. And that bummed me out really bad.
What kind of innards were there?
I have UE7s, Ultimate ears, and I just twisted it out of my ear, which you normally do if you have molded in ears. They twist in and out, and the connector just broke, so it just fell to the ground.
The sevens?
And I got-
How many speakers do those have for drivers?
Those are just triple drivers. How many of you use in ears? That's worth mentioning.
That's awesome.
If you already use in ears and you're looking at getting custom molds, or you don't use in ears and are looking for custom molds, I actually recommend getting, unless you can get really nice JH16s, 8 drivers in each ear or whatever, which most of us can't. I can't afford that. That's crazy. I actually recommend getting a lower amount of drivers, around 3.
Really?
Something without the mid-range drivers, yeah, because unless you have really, really stellar in-ear mixes, the mid-range always gets jacked up. The mid-range is the hardest thing for a lot of sound guys to focus in. So unless you have a really, really good guy running a really, really good board who really, really knows what he's doing, unless you're just lucky like we kind of are here, I would definitely get triple drivers, and I only use triple drivers.
Yeah, I was even debating on getting those red expensive ones that are on the site, the $1,400 ones, because we play a lot of acoustic sets, so that attention to detail on those extra 3 tuners that it has in the drivers.
So the 6 drivers?
Yes.
Yeah, 6 drivers is a little different. When you start, I think when you get 6 or more, you're probably going to do fine. It's just most, if you can afford those, that's amazing.
I can't now.
Well, yeah.
But but you'd recommend those?
Yeah, if you can get really, really good in-ears, it's totally recommended, because of course they're going to sound better. But if you're kind of on a budget, you can only spend a couple $100 on them. Triple drivers will work really, really great. And we actually all like the 535s.
Yeah, sure makes the 535, and those are actually, I like them better than our UE7s.
Yeah, that's what I have.
Yeah, they're awesome, man.
Sure
And they're,
Sure, 535s. Are they SE? 535s.
yeah.
SE 535s.
And they're not crazy expensive either. I mean,
I think they're 400.
yeah, 450 or something like that.
Yeah.
What do you guys recommend them?
They sound pretty natural for an in-ear that's not molded. And
I like them for a guitar though too, because
Yeah.
I've tried different ones, and obviously as a guitar player, you want to have an in-ear that's gonna somewhat make your tone feel accurate, to what your amp actually sounds like, because it's more inspiring. You feel like you play better and all that. But
totally.
so 535s, I found, I like, the way they translate what my amp's doing.
So they're universal though, they're not sealed and custom.
Yeah, when you just buy 535s, they don't do
Yeah.
that mold thing.
The cool thing is, if you go to your audiologist, like hearing aid center or whatever, most of them can make like a little tip that's actually molded, so you just have your molds done, and they make you a tip that you can put on your E5s. And some people do that. It's not as good as an actual molded ear because you don't get the full isolation of, I forget what this part of your ear is called. Something like when you get molds taken, you get something called like a full CIC canal, and it goes down around the first bend and like fills up this whole space. So, I mean,
Feels like you're in outer space.
yeah, it's crazy. They seal up the second one and everything literally goes,
It's awesome.
and then it's like dead quiet.
It's
You
so
can hear your
quiet.
heart beating, and then you're got this bite block in and you're drooling all over yourself.
Yeah.
This is cool. Getting in here, yeah. But so yeah, triple drive. It's kind of a less is more kind of thing is the way I kind of view that one. If you can get the really nice ones, then totally get them. Because I wish I could.
Does your quality get hit if you use Aviums instead of like a battery pack?
The trouble with Avioms is Avioms are great. It's all in the way you set them up. Most churches will set them up. I forget if it's pre or post fade or whatever it's called right now, but basically, most churches I found that have them set them up to where, as the sound guy is making like EQ adjustments on the console and stuff like that, it changes in your ears, which is typically is just terrible because once you find something you like, the sound guy is almost always gonna change something, and then you're freaking out again, wondering why your intermix changed. And also, a lot of them just set them up in mono, and mono is just a really bummer way to run in ears. If you
Especially
have
if you're
to,
running like stereo guitars.
yeah. Well, you can't run stereo guitar. There's no point in running stereo guitars, honestly, if you have a mono in ears, unless your front of house is stereo as well. And then it's just a sound guy thing. You're picking which amp you like better.
Basically, the Avioms, all you're able to control at that point is levels. You know, on your pack, you can turn things up and down, but you can't control
So it's
tones. It's all at the mercy of the.
if you have Avioms at your church, I suggest like talking with your sound guy and making sure you set them up so that when he makes changes on the console, it doesn't change anything in your ears. And also try to set them up stereo. A lot of places, especially if it's a smaller church or medium-sized church, don't really have the board capability to do everything in stereo. But at least being able to start with drums in stereo is a huge deal, and being able to do guitars after that, I think, is
So stereos, they would be both. All the drums would all be in both ears. Is that what you're saying?
basically stereo mix just enables you to do panning, which is where you can move certain instruments or certain parts of instruments into another ear or towards another ear. And what it does is it portrays the way you actually hear things more accurately. If we only heard stuff just straight on, loud noises and stuff would just get crazy chaotic. I mean, if you've ever had a mono mix and everything's just super loud, you know how crazy and frustrating that is. But when you have a stereo mix, it's like what we'll do, we'll pan drums. So kick and snare will be in the middle, but toms will be in the left, because if you're facing a drum kit or you're playing a drum kit, when you hit the tom, you're actually hearing it more towards your left side than you are your right. And it's part of what gives you kind of that depth of instrument and sound. So setting as many things up in stereo is just better, because when you're mixing more clarity, you can actually put more instruments in your mix because you actually have the capability to hear them.
Split everything out so you can be selective.
Exactly.
So just for clarity, my friend actually just told me about this, how they set up their Avioms, and pretty good sized church, and then for some reason something just happens right before the set, and everything's reset in their Avioms, and they're like, what just happened? And they're all freaking out.
Yeah,
And
that's-
was that what you were just trying to explain?
No,
or-
that sounds like a power issue to me, or like one of the main hub, maybe one of the main cables came out or something.
And that would be near the board then.
That would, wherever your main connector is for your Avioms.
Oh yeah, it's not my church, but I was just
Yeah.
playing there and I finally experienced it. I was like, oh, this isn't fun at all.
Yeah, Avioms all run through Cat 5 cable, so
Yeah.
like if your main line going back to like the board, like were to get unplugged or something like that would, I'm pretty sure, reset everything.
Yeah.
Unless you're saving your mixes.
Yeah, which is really smart.
You gotta do that with Avioms.
Yeah, when you find a mix you like for that service, always hold
Save,
down that
save.
save button.
Yeah.
Because I've done that before too. Like right before we
Yeah.
played, like I'll bump it or something, and it'll be like this janky church setup, and I lose my whole mix, and I'm like trying to.
Real quick, and everyone said,
Yeah. Oh frick! I just missed a chord. You know. and that's not fun at all.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I mean, Bobby and I like to run things pretty, maybe not necessarily Q&A style, but like dialogue. So, is there any questions you have for us specifically about tones, and so we're not just like rambling on this is how I do it?
Yeah, you started off on your amp.
Yeah.
It's like figuring out. I was always told to, I wanted to get confirmation that plug your guitar straight into your amp, find that nice clean, whatever your preference is. If you want a lot of headroom, or if you don't, then work on your pedal board. And I would love to know. Well, first of all, is that right? Or would you suggest that approach in trying to find like at least?
Well, like a lot of stuff that we've been talking about, there's not necessarily like a right or wrong way. Like so much of this stuff is subjective because if it sounds good, then it's right. And so, but there is certain tricks and certain things that can be helpful. I find it helpful sometimes, to go and plug directly into my amp and kind of get a range and an idea of where I want that to be set. I think Pope would agree. He does the same thing a lot. So I find that useful. You don't have to. I mean, you could totally be running through your pedal board and do the same thing. But yeah, I like to do that a lot. And then kind of from there, set stuff, pedals and all that on my board and make sure that I'm, liking how they line up with where my amp's up. So, like with drives, making sure they're blended right so that when I'm hitting them on, it's not like going from my clean tone in my amp to like, 30% to 100%. I like to have a nice gradual build when I'm stacking those. So, but I would say, so to answer your question, I think that's a good idea.
When you start with like your amp and like it's all like zeroed out or whatever for getting your sound and everything, what would you start with? Like where would you turn your mids? Where would you turn?
Start with just volume, I would say, because again, like if it's a tube amp, you want to find where you like your headroom to be, So the sweet spot, man. So start with that first, and then you can get into EQs and stuff, and if you're like, well, it's too dark or too bright, you can start adjusting from there. But
it's really a lot of people will ask me and Bobby like, where do you guys set your knobs and stuff like that, and I think we try to explain to people like. We could tell you where we set our knobs, but it probably wouldn't help your guitar sound any better because your guitar is going to sound different through your amp with your fingers. Even if I played your guitar through your amp, it's still going to sound different because we all have different fingers.
Yeah. And that's actually another really important part of tone. Even, I guess that even comes before your amp or your guitar. It's the way you're playing with your left and your right hand. The way you're digging in, all that affects tone.
It's a huge deal.
Yeah, and it's totally true. Like I could play through Pope's rig, everything that he does, and I guarantee you it would sound way different than when he plays. Just because we're different players, the same thing if you play mine. So everybody's got their own unique, approach to guitar with those things.
Yeah. So that's kind of the number one thing for finding your tone, is fingers. But again, like in dialing in an amp, it's really just as simple as using your ears and standing in front of it and being like, just play a couple chords or, play some leads or whatever you're going to play and just listen to how it sounds. And you can kind of, does anybody hear when I was talking kind of like as guitar players, we kind of have that sound in our head that we kind of go for and we can chase after? Yeah. You kind of just compare what you're hearing to that sound in your head. And, okay, well, the sound I'm hearing is a little bit brighter, so, okay, I'll turn the highs up. But now it's, okay, maybe I need a little more mids. Okay, less highs now. A little too muddy, I'll turn the lows down. If you're like me, I like simple things. Tone knob, really nice. Just, boom, got it. So yeah, it's literally just using your ears and practicing it that way as opposed to, well, I wonder where so-and-so sets knobs, or I wonder, what settings somebody uses. It actually kind of develops your style within your own playing a little bit more.
And I would encourage you guys too to explore that and mess around with that. Kind of become your own guitar player. Discover your sound and figure out your style and all that. Because it's awesome to reference and get inspiration from other guys, but ultimately you want to be known for playing how you play, and having that sound that you have, and that's kind of the cool thing is we're always growing, and
and that's why you guys are on your worship teams and stuff. You know,
Yeah.
you were chosen for a reason, not just because you can play a guitar, you know, a couple songs. Like, I think it's deeper than that. You know, your playing is an extension of who you are as a person. So make sure you're doing everything you can to put who you are out through your instrument, and I think that's what attracts worship leaders or, you know, stuff to us as guitar players. It's a very unique and very individual instrument.
Yeah.
As is every instrument. But
Good word. Yeah.
How do you develop your fingers to be able to get a better tone out of them?
I mean, honestly, it's just sitting down and practicing as much as you can.
Like practicing other songs or
Practice everything. When I was growing up, I've played guitar since I was 3. Parents bought me a guitar because I told them I wanted a guitar when I was 3, and I just didn't put it down. And when I was like early teens, I would practice for about 8 hours a day. And what this guy taught me, he went to Berkeley, and I took lessons from him for like 5 or 6 years. When I first came to him, like I could do a lot of stuff. I just didn't do it maybe necessarily the cleanest, and my practice method was kind of all jacked up. And what I learned from him is slowing down and making sure you get things right is the best thing you can possibly do. You know, if your G chords are kind of janky, take the time and be like, okay, how is my finger hitting that string? Right? Like, am I pushing too hard? Am I pushing too hard? Making it sharp and making it sounding weird? Okay. There it is. That's the amount of pressure I need to put on the strings to make it sound nice and clear, right? And then, you know, slowly change between chords and take the time to really make sure you're getting things right. And same thing with leads. Practice your scales before you practice them fast. And if you can nail something really slow, the best thing to always do is you slowly speed it up just a little bit. Like, you can nail something at 70 BPM, play it at 70 BPM for a little while, and then bump it up to 75. And when you can nail it at 75 for a while, bump it up to 80. And you keep going, and you get faster, and you get better. But what you're teaching yourself is you're teaching yourself to actually hit the notes instead of just like fumble through stuff and sound like everybody at Guitar Center that we hate hearing on the weekends. It's just like with anything in life. Like, if you care about something, you're going to take the time to do it right, no matter what it is. Whether it's a relationship, like, you'll put work into it, and you'll make sure you're taking care of the other person's needs in the way that's healthy. Playing guitar is the same thing. You're making sure you're doing things right and setting yourself up on a good foundation. So start slow, take it easy, and then challenge yourself and frustrate yourself a little bit. And when you get frustrated, take a break, cool off, remind yourself, I'm going to nail that next week. And the week after that, nail it even more, even faster. So.
2 things. I'll just tell them both to you, and maybe you guys can split it up. One is, what's a good band for good influences on tone? Because I'm not really good at explaining to my students, because I also lead the main service, but I've also been put in charge of the youth worship. And it's hard to explain, and I never really knew that until I got asked it by like 4 of them. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna go to school. It's gonna be like 4 more weeks to get there. And then I'll say, and that's my first question. And then second is tone in regards to 2 electric players such as yourselves, both are capable of playing the parts in a team. If that makes sense, because sometimes I'll like have my tone like, I love it, and I'm like, I do not like how my tone matches with that guy. I'm gonna make sure I never have him on my road, you know. I mean, like, but it drives me nuts. So I'm like, I don't like my tone anymore now because that's silly. If that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, on that, I mean, that's kind of something that you have to discuss and figure out with whoever you're playing with, and that's kind of something we touched on in one of our other classes too. Is you know, it's important when you're playing with other people, especially in worship. You know, it's those relationships, and you know, one thing with all the at least the core guys especially, that you see at Bethel, like we're good friends, and so, you know, like we hang out a lot, and that all plays into when we're on stage playing music. You know, we want it to be the best it can be, and so, you know, for like Pope and I with guitar, you know, obviously we want to make our sounds and our tones and everything blend the best. So, you know, going into a set or whatever, like we definitely are figuring out in like a rehearsal. You know, we're figuring out parts, and you know, you're doing this or whatever, and you know, tone-wise, we don't really have to talk about it much because we kind of know now like what we do. We kind of have learned.
We kind of lucked out because
Yeah.
our tone, like on our own before we knew each other, like we didn't really change anything. We just started playing together and kind of realized like, oh, our tones complement each other. This is
Yeah.
kind of cool.
Yeah.
But in pulling apart our tones, we've noticed, you know, mine tends to be dirtier and mid-rangier, and his tends to be cleaner and deeper and sparklier. And then he goes from clean to crazy dirty. He gets way dirtier than I did. So Bobby's just like here and here. He's like the two extremes, and I'm just like the meet in the middle kind of thing.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, just kind of, you know, whoever you're playing with, it's important to, you know, talk to them or whatever. You know, figure out like, hey, let's figure out what kind of tones or whatever we're going to be trying to achieve in this set. Or so that's what I would do with that. I don't know if that answered your question.
Okay. As far as influences go, I'd say Bethel music probably has the best.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
I listen to.
When it comes to guitar tone,
And the worst is probably Jesus culture.
yeah.
Totally kidding.
It's okay. You're not recorded.
You were.
Yeah.
This is going to appear on Jeffrey.
I'm sorry, Jeffrey. I'm sorry.
Put it on
Joke.
BSW 2013.
You understand. I know you were hating on me in your classes. I don't even play. I understand. Influence. It's funny, like, I don't listen to a lot of worship for guitar.
Yeah, me neither.
influence.
Okay. No, that's fine. I've heard.
In fact, I don't at all.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Do you think that helps? I mean, do you think like that? Do you think it would help to listen to worship music?
I mean,
for that?
Yeah,
honestly,
for
I don't really listen to a lot of records with the idea of like, oh, I want my guitar to sound that way.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I'll be like, oh, that's a cool sound. I wonder how they did that, or little things like that. And I mean, for certain things, like when I play slide, I will totally admit, yeah, I'm totally ripping off James Duke. But it's not because I want to sound exactly like James Duke.
Mhm.
It's because what he does with the slide lends itself to worship music really, really well. And that's an influence that I've drawn from and kind of incorporated into my own playing style.
Okay, so I got James.
James is great for worship music.
Duke.
James Duke, yeah. He's killer. He plays for John Mark McMillan Elevation Church.
I'm a huge, well, Pope is too, but I'm a huge Ryan Adams fan.
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to guitar tones, man. That guy has some of the most BA guitar tones.
He's got great guitar tones.
Yeah, and he's cool because he doesn't just do one style of music either, but everything he does is rad. So, I mean, he does straight up rock and roll, he does country, he does folk, and everything, man. His tones are just like sick.
Yeah.
So I would pick up all his records, you know, pretty
Yeah,
much.
buy every rock.
Buy a lot
Especially
of
rock and roll. That's the best.
Yeah,
one.
rock and roll is a great record. Just for guitar, it's unreal. So I love him.
Yeah.
And probably for me, my other like biggest influence, and they same thing. They have pretty wide range of like tone stuff. I'm a huge Radiohead fan. They're probably like just musically, they're my biggest influence.
Yeah.
And they do a lot of different stuff.
Yeah.
Like on their newer records, they're doing a lot more dry, clean tone kind of stuff. Whereas if you go back to records like OK Computer, it was more kind of drivey, big reverbs, whatever kind of stuff. But everything they do is awesome, I think. So.
That's funny. I have more like player influences. I guess like I was always into like Billy Gibbons of ZZ Top. I really love Dan Auerbach of the Black Keys. His guitar tones are amazing.
He has rad tones.
And they don't always lend themselves to worship. Granted, right now I'm the only worship guy I know that's using a fuzz face, and I kind of feel really good about that. But I think what inspires me about their tone is it's unique and it's different, and that's kind of what I want to pull away. Like, it inspires me to figure out what I want my guitar to sound like. And also like a lot of country players, Paisley and, Oddly Freed is amazing, and Peter Stroud is awesome. Peter Stroud is 50% of
Yeah, why not? Recommendations for tubes. For the
Bobby knows
rhythm.
more about tubes than I do.
No, I don't.
You fully
Actually,
do.
I really don't. I know guys that know a lot about tubes, and I usually go to them and ask them what they think I should do. What I've typically done just in my amp is, through some cool guys that I know back in Portland, I've put in some cool vintage tubes from like the 60s actually. So in here I've got, they're called Bugle Boys, and they're made by Mullard, or the same company that makes Mullard tubes.
Bugle
Yeah, Bugle Boy, I think that's what they are. But look up Mullard. Mullard's amazing. They're a British made tube, and I think Bugle Boy is like the Holland version of them or whatever. But if you can find them online, in good shape, pick them up because they're super rad.
Yeah.
So.
I've got all new tubes in mine, just because at the time I didn't have any money for NOS tubes because they're pretty pricey, and they're totally worth it because they sound really good.
Yeah.
But I needed to buy tubes because I would turn it on and just go really, really loud. No sound whatsoever. Yeah. So I am using right now a company called TAD. I would recommend TADs and then JJs. The TADs are rumored to be a little more quality than the JJs, but JJs are what came in this amp stock, and right now it's compared to the way it sounded with the JJs in it. It sounds just a little too harsh for me, just barely. I'm really sensitive to harsh amps. That's why I don't really like Matchless. Some other stuff.
Orange.
Sorry if you have an orange. It's a top end thing, and I think it's maybe just because I probably have some sort of hearing loss or something. But yeah, so JJs or TADs are pretty awesome tubes for new tubes. I'd stay away from groove tubes or Rudy tubes or.
Yeah. You know what? Is actually, you guys should write this down if you're interested in getting good tubes. Euro Tubes is the company called. Those guys are awesome.
Are they?
Yes.
Shops on there, but I'm like, dude, I don't know about that. Looks kind of.
Oh, they're totally legit.
Really?
Yeah, their website's so hokey looking, it's hilarious.
It
but
is. That's
yeah,
why I was like-
but if you call them, it's usually Bob will answer the phone, like the guy from Your Tubes. And the big church actually worked at back in Portland, Oregon before I moved up here. Ordered all our tubes from there all the time. Super awesome. The cool thing about those guys is you can call them and be like, hey, this is the amp I have. This is kind of what I want my amp to sound like. I want it to be more modern or more vintage or whatever. And they'll basically be like, okay, these are the tubes you need.
Sweet,
and they're
okay.
super smart, super easy to work with. Totally recommend them.
I was gonna say their site is vast, so I'm like, how?
Yeah,
do I
just
find
call them. There's a
that?
number. I wouldn't even because they have different, you can pick stuff out and just order it, but I would just call them, especially if it's like your first time and you're learning about tubes. Give them a call and just be like, hey, this is kind of what I'm looking for. Or you can even just say, this is the amp I have and I don't know what I'm looking for. What's a good tube set? And they'll be like, oh, dude, I got the thing for you. And they're super awesome, very helpful. But, yeah, I call those guys. Euro Tubes. Yep, Euro. He usually answers the phone, Euro Tubes.
Does anybody have a bad cat?
Jeffrey does. Jeffrey has an endorsement with Bad Cat, so he has his own signature model.
I'm not jealous.
Yeah, I'm a little jealous. The Bad Cats actually sound really good. They're a little.
I know it's
Huh?
it's purely opinion, but yeah.
Yeah, I've played a lot of them that I don't like. I actually like Jeffrey's.
Okay, yeah. I've only,
Jeffrey's is 40 watts though, so it's just so
Oh,
loud.
interesting.
You're just like,
yeah, that's awesome.
it's like.
I guess I've only played one. I didn't like it, but
Which one did you play though?
Yeah.
I wish I could remember. It was a combo. I don't.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like my size.
I'm looking to sell my box, and then bump up to a different one.
The Bad Cats are cool. I like Jeffrey's is called the Luca. It's named after his little boy. So if you're looking for a Bad Cat, I think those sound pretty awesome. And so does Jeffrey.
Is it a combo? Of course.
Yeah, I think you can get it in a combo, but I think it's advertised as a head and a cab. Also,
do you use head half stacks at all?
it depends. I went to Toronto back in March, and they had one of these for me in a head and a cab, and they also had a JCM 800 from the 80s, which if you don't know what a JCM 800 is, that's the amp that Slash used back in the 80s. And I freaking love those amps, because you can get amazing clean tones, but they break up in this very... Actually, the other channel of this amp does Marshall really well, because it's a 12AX7 side. So just like it's like punchy and just like rock. So it sounded kind of like that, only I didn't have it set that crazy. I haven't used that channel in a long time. I might start doing that. That was punchy.
Your 80s rock sets.
Oh my god. I hate 80s music. But, so JCM 800s are cool if you can find them from the 80s. Marshall stopped making good amps in the 80s, so anything 90s or after, don't buy it. But 80s or before, totally buy it.
That Fender looks pretty nice though, so it kind of made me.
I'm a Fender guy, man. It's all preference, but typically when I play stereo, I play through this, and then the other amp I'm playing through, it's Chris is actually the front of house guy, and it's a Pro Sonic, which those things are sweet. Yeah, I love the way they sound together.
Been looking at 65, but also like divided by 13. Have you guys
They're
played
killer.
through any of them?
They're killer.
I haven't played through them, but yeah.
Are they good?
I love them. They're killer. You have to be careful. Some of them are a little weird sounding. I hate companies that like the amp isn't like a name like the London or the Luca, or it has a name. It's like numbers and letters because I just can never remember them. But I do know the good divided by 13s that I really like are the FTR 37 and the RSA 23. So check those ones out. Those are sweet.
Is that the London?
This is a London, yes.
Okay.
And this is actually an older one. So I don't know if they're making this particular one anymore. I know they're making one called the London Pro.
Yeah. Has like a head.
Yeah, this one's from 2008 or something. I've had this for a little while. I bought this right before they got really, really big, which is kind of awesome. Because it's weird. I've played some other 65s and I didn't really like them. But this one's very vintage voiced and it kind of sounds like a big UC-15. So every guitar I put through this thing, I just get super stoked on.
Yeah.
So.
Here's a question: like when you guys are playing like indie or like classic rock or country, like do you change like the tone on your amps a lot, or you just keep the same?
That you can do that all from playing style, and pedals like the like we'll do in some of the new songs we have like anybody listen to a band called the XX? It's just very kind of like verbed out, non-verb, but like real picked. It's Letting Go. We played that one today. It's a good song.
No, we didn't play it today. We were going to play it.
We did, that's right.
Yeah, didn't play it.
It's a song coming out on Tides. Everybody buy it. I said that in every single one of my classes.
Wait, what is it?
It's called Tides. It's our new record coming out in September. It's dope. So I would consider that pretty indie tone, you know? Yeah.
It's like shoegaze.
Or, Bombay Bicycle Club.
You guys like Beach House? I love Beach House. They do lots of really crazy, sweet.
Bobby can play more of that stuff than I can.
Verbed out.
Or even like we'll go. Kind of clean verb, a little bit of delay. So they can do that, and then just by playing country style. Right, slap back. Like that's pretty country.
And that's all the same settings on your amp.
Yeah, well, sorry, I'll put those back. That's the whole point. Back to where it was. Like country right there. Classic rock. ZZ Top riff. Like most of like covering genres has less to do with your gear. I mean, even frick, like, who is it?
I was waiting for you to
We
say
could do like I'm like out of blank on who, but, or like, you know, you could do kind of a. Jack White, right? And Jack White doesn't even use these pedals, but that's not as awesome as Jack White. He's crazy cool.
He is pretty cool.
But I mean, a lot of the covering different genres has less to do with your gear and more to do with your fingers. Like, if you were me playing those different genres right there, like all I'm doing, I'm changing a couple pedals, granted, but I'm changing the way I'm playing. You know, for indie rock, I'm smooth, right? For rock or something, I'm digging in. I'm playing harder. It's more about these than it is this. And when you find gear that complements what all you can do with your hands, like, you're set. You know, few pedals to make things easier happen. But I mean, this would be considered about the most worship setup you can get aside from the bus face. And I just played indie rock, classic rock, White Stripes, and if I turned knobs up enough, I could do a really bad Kill Switch Engage impersonation. So,
Are any of you guys in here more like rhythm guitar players, like in your worship team, as opposed to like lead? Yeah. So for like more of you guys that do more like rhythm stuff, I would encourage you, with going back to the whole finger thing, to like dig in, because like there's so many. I just see that a lot with rhythm guys. They'll be up there, you know, playing. You know, it's like, man, dig in, you know. And that's where, again, it comes back to the fingers.
Yeah.
It brings out, you can just be so much more like dynamic. And that's because I do a lot of rhythm, you'll see that when I play. Like, I just always try to bring a lot of that energy, because it goes a long way. It'll
you
make
can
a
hear
big
your
difference.
tone tighten up too.
Yeah, your tone will actually
Like,
come out a lot more too.
If you've got a bunch of drive on. Kind of sounds loose and a little weird, but it's a little punchier. It's actually clear. It's because digging in, like, does all that. And a lot of that comes from confidence. I'm doing band sessions with a bunch of different people. Probably the number one thing I have to tell them, and granted, a lot of them are nervous, and I get super nervous when I have to play sometimes. But like, if you can get to a come back! I didn't mean it. I'm sorry.
It's like, I'm out of here.
He's gone.
I can't
He didn't
do
like
this.
my tone. No, it's like, confidence is not an arrogant thing, but if you
Yeah.
practice and you put in the time,
Totally.
things like digging in comes from your confidence, and that's why I encourage everybody to practice. Because if you can play confidently, you might not even be able to play all that many things. But if you can play chords confidently, I guarantee you you're going to get picked over the dude who can maybe shred a couple things, but doesn't
Just kind of
shred
stands
them
there.
well. Yeah, it's funny. Attitude and rocking out has so much to do with your tone. It's funny, like, it's something that Bobby, and I haven't told Bobby this, but I'm going to brag on you for a minute. He's totally inspired me as a player in coming here, because one thing I love about him and his tone is when he's on stage, he freaking rocks out and goes crazy. And I can see what that does to his tone. And it's funny, if you go back and you watch streaming, before he was here, I would just kind of, like, I was digging in, but I feel like my tone has actually gotten better since he showed up, because he just kind of inspired me as a player to, like, really dig in, rock out a little bit. And it's funny, like, my tone got a lot better just from, like, moving around on stage, or, like, I don't know, standing weird, or spinning around and, like, rocking out with Graham on the kit for a little bit. Like, getting into the music and feeling it and, like, being stoked and not really caring if something looks flashy. Like, obviously don't do anything. I'm not about to jump off the drum riser unless we're a really awesome Holy Spirit moment, right? But, like, having fun with it and that, like, it's a huge deal for tone. that's been the biggest lesson I've learned in like the past couple weeks even of playing. Just like getting into the music and being stoked about what you're playing makes your tone better because you actually want to play it.
Yeah.
You're back.
Yeah, my youth build the electric guitars. Just
Oh,
call me.
cool. I
So-
thought you maybe hated my tone or something. I'm sorry
We're
if what I said
joking.
offended
No,
you.
you're good.
Um,
Forgive me.
cool.
But yeah, that's good. And even on that too, like I think there's a fine line between like when it comes to like the rocking out and moving around because I do love to do that. But there's it's like a heart thing. Like if you're up there just doing it because you just want to like look BA in front of people.
Don't do it because you want to impress.
Yeah,
chicks,
like
or-
it's that'll show. People can see that. But if you're up there, it's basically the same as dancing before the Lord, except you've got a guitar on.
Yeah.
And there's a really cool thing about that too. I think it even releases kind of a freedom in people in your congregation too. If they see that you're up there just having a ball, having fun, rocking out, then it like kind of frees them up. Like, oh man, I don't have to just stand here, which is super uncomfortable too when you're leading worship, and you feel like, come on guys, and everyone's just standing there watching you. Which the cool thing about Bethel is people are so engaged here, and I love that. But yeah, it releases definitely like a freedom. So push yourself to do that because totally it can also be super helpful
It has
and
benefits.
it has benefits.
It's
Yeah.
proven that to me.
Thanks, man.
Rocking out.
Has it ever been like a desire of any of y'all's to build anything, like pedal wise, or like? In the
I have
future?
too many friends that are a lot smarter than me
Yeah.
at that stuff. That are really good at that.
Exactly.
So I have friends that have built me stuff, and I'm like, wow, I could never do that good. I'm just gonna leave that to you.
The question makes me
Yeah.
call Aaron right now.
I know. Yeah. Where's Aaron right now?
What can you build me tonight?
Yep. Yeah. So no.
Yeah, I like to build on guitars, kind of. Dan's calling me. I'm probably supposed to be at band session soon. Like this guitar. Again, another good thing about tone. Quickly, I'll say I think an amp is the most important. Then I think next is fingers first. Duh. But gear-wise, amp is most important. Then find a guitar that feels right to you, sounds right to you, and then all this other nonsense that sucks anyway. This guitar I searched for a lot of years for a Tele, and I finally settled on this one, and it says "Made in Mexico" on the back. Isn't that crazy?
It actually says Old Faithful.
Yeah, it says Old Faithful too, because this guitar has been very faithful to me. And this is like, I've got some nice guitars. I have a Duesenberg that was given to me.
Given?
Brian gave me that Duesenberg. So that's a very special guitar. I mean, I've got an acoustic. That was a gift from my parents when I was 16. But this is the guitar that I, like, if it was gone, I would really grieve over. I had like $4 grand saved for a Tele, and I played everything and couldn't find anything. And finally this one felt right, and I literally just made it my own, changed the pickups, changed all the innards and the guts, put brass knobs on it because they age and they look dirty and nasty and old and cool. And saddles because compensated saddles stay in tune better, and brass is vintage and sounds darker and it's cooler. And like a week before school, I took the finish off the back of the neck. I sat in my room on the floor with a razor blade and just like hacked it off, and then I took steel wool over it and put some lemon oil on it. And you can see I sweat a ton on stage, so it's like going dark and awesome already. And this is the other thing. I don't like buying relic guitars. I can sit down and I can tell you this little mark on the back here is when I was on tour in the UK, and I played with Martin Smith for the first time, and that was totally life-changing. And this is where my little brother nicked his guitar into it, and this is where my ex-girlfriend was wearing it like a purse and dropped it on the pavement. And this is when Dan McKenzie threw his keys at me, and it's like, and all that sounds kind of dumb and nostalgic and whatever. It's just a hunk of wood, but like I said kind of earlier, like it's an extension of you, and if you can find an instrument that you bond with and play with, I think it inspires you to play more and inspires you to play better. Like, I want to play this guitar. Every time I see it, I'm like, frick, I want to play that guitar right now. So keep that in mind too, before you maybe go buy a guitar or something. It doesn't have to be some crazy expensive, awesome, custom-made, whatever guitar. You make it what it is yourself, and yeah.
Is that the D
vacation you came to Mexico for?
No, that was not.